to Watch is an intimate look into the lives of prominent and influential women leaders from around the world and the challenges they faced on their journey. It's the real story behind her title. Join us every week to hear more stories about women from around the world and in your own communities at womentowatch.net. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another week of Women to Watch. I'm Sue Rocco. It's so great to be here. Joining me in just a moment will be Joy Fan, and Joy is the founder of Retail, which is a company that's rebuilding storefronts and providing access to brands to be both online and in brick and mortar. As always, be sure to stay with us during the breaks where you'll hear from our exclusive watch team of corporate partners. And we'd love for you to subscribe to our YouTube page at Women to Watch Media. That's W, the number 2, W Media. So now I'm very excited and honored to welcome to the show, Joy Fan.
Thank you so much, Sue.
Wonderful to have you. And just so our viewers know, you're joining us from New York.
I am.
But I'd love to start with a little bit about your background in New Orleans, which is where you were born. And I understand only there for about 8 years.
About 8 years, yep. That's correct.
And those are very formidable years. Tell me a little bit about what you remember about the community there.
Yes, I love the word community that you brought up because very much so. We were, we lived in Metairie, which is the suburb just about 19 minutes away from New Orleans. But my mom actually brought my sisters and I, so I have an older sister and a twin sister, and brought us to the French Quarter all the time. So our formative years was around seeing music and people just creating in the streets and dancing. So I think maybe that a lot of that may have been the infrastructure for why I'm, so involved with community work. And so that was our formative years in New Orleans.
Yeah. And then tell me what took you to California, the West Coast?
Yeah. So my dad went to medical school at LSU. And then when he got a job, it landed us into the Bay Area in Marin County.
Okay. I know that you and I had a wonderful conversation a couple of months ago, and your father was a big influence in your life. And I wonder if you can share with our viewers what it was about your dad that you feel impacted your aspirations and desires to do something around, I would say, community, building, fixing things.
Yeah, he was just a man of many strengths, but I think one of the things we always saw was that he was constantly working, but for the people. And I think when you're young, you think, okay, dad has to work all the time. So he's in the medical profession, running women's health in the Bay Area, in San Francisco. And so in our early years, he was always just, anytime there was something to be done, be supporting the community in different ways. And we always saw that. He was definitely someone who just worked a lot. And I think in seeing that, I was always very curious on, what was going to be my impact in the world. I think just watching him be so determined and diligent on making an impact in the world was something that I always aspired.
And can you share with me a little bit about what some of the challenges were for you growing up? I think you mentioned a lack of people who looked like you in the community, and that's always, especially for children. Yeah. I would say young, very, very young, they don't even recognize it, right? But then we get to an age where we do.
Exactly. We were brought up in the Bay Area, which most people think, oh, incredible. You probably grew up with a lot of Asians. The pocket of Marin, in that time, in the 80s, there weren't a lot. And so we were very much grew up in a nuclear family where my parents, they worked, and we were actually brought up by the malls. And so my parents would basically drop us off and that became our babysitter, is that we would walk around. And why I think in the adoption of really wanting to save retail, maybe that has seeped into my mindset. But yeah, my sisters and I would just walk around for hours on end. And maybe that was the first underpinning of why a lot of the work that I do has been about asset management, working with communities, rebuilding storefronts in neighborhoods.
Yeah, I guess I'm guessing having sisters, you're all kind of in it together and you're able to lean on each other and go through whatever experiences you had together. Were you close with your sisters?
Super close, yeah. My sisters and I, we played, we had fun. So yeah, my older sister is about 3 years, and she was really into music early on, which I think us coming from New Orleans just made a lot of sense. And then she was pretty entrepreneurial too, and wanted to be a radio DJ in high school. So she created that club in which we followed suit. And yeah, I think a lot of being close to my sisters and having that nuclear family mindset, we just had to be super independent.
Yeah. So tell me about your decision to go to University of California, and it was environmental design, I believe, was your
That's
major.
right. Yep, that's
And
right.
how did you, first of all, was that a good fit for you, would you say, both the major and that school?
Yeah, at that time, Davis was the only University of California campus that had something in the design department. And so I actually went in as a pre-med student and did that for 2 years, double majored in environmental design and pre-med, and found myself more curious about design work, and then really set in on doing environmental design with a minor in marketing.
Wow. So those are two completely different areas.
Yeah.
Both, I would say, challenging academically, right? Um, was there an experience or a moment where you knew, the medical direction was not for you? And what
Yeah.
was it?
As a young girl who very much adored her father, um, you walk in the path in proximity of maybe what your parents are doing. And I think more so I was really curious about design, and the environment in which creates cities. Um, I don't really know. I think I wanted to manage both, because I was thinking, maybe there's an opportunity to do both, which in hindsight, I remember my mother having a conversation saying, look, in the studious version of you, you can go back to school at any time and pursue pre-med. But in a entrepreneurial journey, if you do want to do something in the startup space, or in the design space, or in the urban development space, it's really keen to just get those roots of being able to get back up and kind of do the hard things and take the risks early on. So I think that was the conversation that led me to taking the step towards entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I like that your mom said that to you. Um, was it ever a consideration to to perhaps focus on healthcare? So, in other words, design,
Mm.
environmental design in the healthcare field.
It never, I think I just became more and more curious about how cities were run, how it became something that I moved straight to New York right out of college, and I did some design work out in New York, and then came back to San Francisco about 4 years later. And
Okay.
that's when I got into real estate. And I think it was the accidental path that really just led me to, you kind of see something that is a big opportunity. You see all the guardrails of why it's not working, and then you start to solve. And that was always something that I think always came up for me. So yeah, that's kind of the link to some of the stuff I'm doing today.
Yeah. For people that aren't familiar, the term, I see the term urbanist. What is that in the simplest terms?
Sure. It's there's definitely a technical version, but I would say I've always looked at infrastructure and the way cities are built, from placemaking to urban planning. I fell into the technical side, so building a startup from ground up in 2012, and it was really to answer vacancy during the recession in 2008.
So that was storefront.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Great
So
memory.
how did that come to be? How did that opportunity present itself to you?
Yeah, so I entered the work into the field of work, graduating from university, and then I landed back into San Francisco around 2007, 8. So that was right during the recession, and I jumped into asset management, but alongside of that, I was actually running these pop-ups with a bunch of friends, and having had the design bug in me. And of course, if you remember in that time, Sue, a lot of brands were, jumping into the ether of the online world. And
Mhm.
those were a lot of my friends who we were building brands, we were creating things. And so a lot of that creativity was really stuck in the online ether. And as someone who really believes that you have to connect with the people, your audience, your customer. I was always saying, why not start doing some pop-ups? So at that time, it was called just sample sales or trade shows. But we just started to bring together people, and that was the first layer of doing pop-ups, and then really seeing that there was an opportunity to link brands who were building online to being able to surface them into physical retail.
Okay. And if I remember correctly, the storefront was acquired in 2016,
Right.
which that's quick. So that's 5 years. A lot of entrepreneurs, it takes 5 years to really kind of start rolling along, generating revenue. And and I'm assuming you had a partner or
Yeah, so it was a founding team. I was the first hire to run basically all of business development and worked with some of the great brands that everyone knows of today. So Bonobos, Warby Parker, were all brands that we had worked with. And what Storefront did, which not a lot of people recognize, is that pop-ups, that word in general, was non-existent pre-2012.
Mhm.
And the reason why is that short-term real estate was not even popularized. People were very against it because at that time it was 10, 20, 30-year leases was the common. Um, and so we collected the demand of brands who wanted to go into short term, and that became a market that ran globally. And so when we were acquired, it was by a European company, and we went into a global marketplace overnight.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
That must have felt really good after the 5 years of what I'm sure was, there's worry, there's excitement, right? There's building. And tell me, before we talk about retail, tell me what is it about you that has allowed you to take risks,
Mm.
which you seem to have done, quite a bit.
I would say that having seen my parents move over and immigrate and having, you know, building without a lot of it, much, maybe if I look back, I would have called them entrepreneurs, saying that they are taking risks every day. They have no
I
idea.
neglected to mention that
Right.
they came from Taiwan.
That's right. That's right.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So
So I think no matter what you see, just, the opportunities are possible when your parents kind of come up with just different ways to put food on the table, with different ways to entertain us. And I think that was the adoption that I had from my upbringing. My sisters may say something different, but I would say that everything that my parents did was to ensure that we had a better life. And so that always stuck with me. I wake up knowing that the opportunity I give back is very much a part of who I am. So if I get to take my learnings and actually shift it into being able to provide resources for other people, other entrepreneurs, that that's something that I can be excited and proud of, and really ensure that my parents see that they gave up the opportunity to be with family and have a steady life to being able to take risks and come and, really build the American dream to give their 3 girls the opportunity to do whatever they want. And yeah, I'm always grateful.
Yeah, we talk often on the show about just taking risks, and everyone has a different mindset when they do. Sometimes they're saying, "What do I have to lose?"
Right.
Right? And you can always start over again. How would you describe? I don't like the word failure. I think it's trying something and then determining it's not the right fit and trying something else, eliminating that. Um, how would you describe your definition of when something doesn't work and it's time to pivot?
Yeah, I would say that it's always evolving. So I look at it more as there's opportunities everywhere. I think some people use different platforms for different things, some to amplify, some to fix. I'm in the bucket of fixing. When you hear it 3 times and someone, says, "Hey, why are vacancies rising?" You just look at the people around you and say, "Okay, cool. Can we do something and fix it?" And I just go into the bucket of, "Great. Well, if no one's raising their hand, let's do it."
Yeah.
So enough times, it's rather more the impatience of seeing that it's not necessarily failure, but the willingness to always raise your hand and saying, "Great, who's up for it? Let's do this." And yeah, that's, I think, more the mindset and the bucket that I sit in.
Yeah. Listen, we're going to go into our first break. And when we come back, I want to talk about retail and how that came to be and what really your vision is
Awesome.
for the future and real estate and all these empty buildings everyone's wondering what we're going to do with.
Yes,
Stay with
excited
us
to
as
hear.
we go into our break, and you'll hear from our corporate partner Visit Philly and Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. We'll be right back with Joy Fan.
People are super nice, and it's like very walkable.
I already have like 15,000 steps today. I think the Schuylkill is pretty nice. Like obviously Rittenhouse Park is really nice.
Philly has some of the best food ever. Definitely Badia. How could you not? I went to a Lotta recently. Fantastic.
Philadelphia has always been a great scene for food. We've always had great Italian food. There's great Mexican food. If you go to West Philly, there's a ton of like Indian and Ethiopian. There's all kinds.
Just skate around Philly, just cruising, listening to music, come across a mural. It's just amazing. They're big, colorful. I love it.
We chose Philly because it's one of our team building and go check out the art.
I think one of the coolest parts of Philly is the murals and the street art. And I don't think it's something you should necessarily like go out and look for, but something that you should find on your own.
You getting on the damn train, everybody's got their jersey on Sundays and whatnot. Like, I love it. The Phillies were in the World Series, the soccer team was in their championship, and the Eagles, you know what I'm saying, could have won a Super Bowl.
So if New York and Philly were at a party, New York would be the one that would need to be the center of attention, and they're gonna make sure that everybody's taking shots with them. Philly's gonna go with it, and they're gonna have a great time, and they're gonna be like the hype man, but they're actually gonna last a little bit longer because they're gonna go like harder, nitty grittier.
We are CHOP, and we can't wait to show you around. We're the nation's first children's hospital. Now, a care network with more than 50 locations that continues to expand. 3 state-of-the-art research buildings with 1.5 million square feet of space. We have grown from 12 beds 165 years ago to nearly 600 beds and one of the best children's hospitals in the world. We have a level 1 trauma center, 11 floors of patient units, more than 20 operating rooms, first of its kind delivery unit for babies with birth defects, a separate cardiac operative and catheterization suite, and places to learn, like our internationally recognized simulation center. We have trained generations of leaders in the field of pediatrics. We are world leaders in medicine, surgery, and science. One of the top recipients in NIH funding for pediatric research. In this building, pioneers in CAR T therapy, mitochondrial disease, brain tumors, hyperinsulinism, and other rare diseases. Here, groundbreaking work in fetal surgery, genetics and genomics, and neurology. In our newest building, leaders in social determinants of health, clinical informatics and epidemiology, autism, trauma and injury prevention. Our patients come from every state and 115 countries. Meeting these challenges requires the best and the brightest. We are passionate about pediatrics. We are motivated to make a difference in the world and in our community. We are a team. We are CHOP.
Welcome back to the show. I'm joined this week by Joy Fan, and Joy is the founder and CEO of Retail. And I'm going to let her tell you what that is. And actually, I'm curious what happened between the 2016 acquisition of Storefront and then the launch of Retail.
Yes, absolutely. So I actually took a stint and built a consultancy arm in which I worked with many REITs like Westfield and Macerich. And that got me the opportunity to build some things called Retail as a Service, and worked with many, many amazing clients like Beta, and also specific brands like Rhone to build out their retail strategy. And then when we got acquired, I then got to run all of US as the GM and chief creative. And that was in 2017. And in 2019, I finally left to go out on my own. I still had my consultancy arm. So it was really important for me to continuously work with brands who I felt like needed to, either continue to branch out. And so that was the space I was in between 2016 and then between building Retail. And Retail came during the pandemic. We all remember March 2020. I think I was sitting around and we were the first 100 days in New York City, the highest vacancy rate that I've ever seen in my lifetime. And I think in many within the past 100 years. I would point out some stats. There was about 36% vacancy during, I would say, April of 2020, May, June, and everybody was optimistic, but it felt very familiar. And I remember just thinking, oh, my stomach was gutted with the idea that so much of the work that we had done over the past 10 years was completely flatlined. And so, clearly it was something that very passionate about. Walked around checking in with, our neighborhood barista, our neighborhood retail store managers, and just making sure everyone was okay. I think what people don't recognize is that the store owners or the GMs, it's very hard to keep up. And Sue, I don't remember if where you were at during that time, but so much of it was the volatility of staying open, closing. And anyone who runs a business understands that keeping a schedule and making sure that your employees are getting paid is, doing it in a normal situation is already hard. Having also government mandates of things being closing, having a quarter being the occupancy was, I think it was half to a quarter, and that meant that a lot of the businesses lost out on full occupancy. So, I know that the city, New York City, was doing a lot of things to make sure that there was dining outside, but in between that, a lot of the storefronts were shutting down. And so really, and to combat that, we looked at how do we ensure that we create four-wall profitability for storefronts without them being displaced. And so you can imagine if we have just pure inflation of products, people would rather then buy a coffee maker at home rather than grab a coffee that's going to be $10. And so how do we ensure that we create that balance? We created retail just to take excess space and turn it into access for online brands so that the existing storefronts and owners and operators could actually then drive some revenue, recurring revenue for the excess space. And then on the flip side, online brands can actually grow their footprint and start to learn things from their customer.
So is all of what you're doing shared space? So there are multiple brands within one space?
That's right.
So to spread the cost.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So in summary, yes. So retail is a B2B marketplace and booking platform so that online brands can actually book excess space, and storefronts then can share on that space to, again, gain revenue, to be able to have relevant products in their space and start to test out different products within their space.
I'd love your view on this. People say with technology, all of the stores are going to go away and everyone's going to sit at home and be on their laptops ordering things, right? And I just think that completely goes against human nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're social beings. I don't see that ever happening, that there will always be a mix of needing to be out and about to socialize, but also to see products firsthand and touch them and feel them. And, what is your view on that?
I think with every generation, you have individuals who are sought out to innovate and use technology in different ways. I have been and always will be a big proponent of, in real life, we are human first. And I do see that we're kind of over-indexing now, and live events are happening strong. Conferences are doing their thing. And so there will always be that. I think one area in general is humanizing how we share product. Yes, there is going to always be the online ether. And I love the different platforms that have allowed for that to create some ease. But I do think discoverability still, and you're going to love this, Sue, 92% of discovery still happens in person. And what I mean by that is that if we are walking by and we're suddenly cold, great, we might grab a hat, a scarf, something like that. You start to see in your own life that if you are at a coffee shop, you start looking at a candle, you might purchase it. And so we're looking at, as these things happen, how do we ensure that we have the right intersection of how discoverability happens and the access happens? And, I think that no matter what, we're gonna, people are very excited about AI. I do think that there will still be a large component of how storefronts are run more efficiently. There's going to be a lot of rezoning that happens, but it's going to be exciting because I hope that what we end up doing is saying that maybe the format of the storefronts will be smaller, but the way that we engage will have a large impact.
Right. You worked right through 2008, the recession. You worked right through the pandemic. Both of those were scary times. People were just nervous and on edge. Tell me what is your practice in life to get through those times of fear?
Ooh, I have heavily influenced by my dad. always remaining super calm, especially when big things happen. And so you can imagine, growing up with a father who had to be called to the hospital, his beeper ringing all the time. You think, okay, well, these are big things. Yeah, I think being able to just be calm and understand what can I do, and so that's always been something I go to. The pandemic was hard. Um, there were a lot of things that within our own communities were being impacted. A lot of the Asian hate crimes were also happening all over the nation, and so yeah, there was days where it felt hard. It felt harder than normal, but you just get to work, and that's been something that I'm so proud to have a community, also a partner who believes in the same things. And to us, we discuss internally, great. You see things happening and it just feels unjust. What do you do to actually make that change?
I think that a part of you're a very forward thinking person. And I think that's incredibly helpful, when there are times, and that really leads to solving a problem. Let's fix it. Let's not wallow in it or look to the past, and I'm curious, how many women are in your field?
Ooh, within women, so I am part of Women in Prop Tech, which is
Yeah.
founded and led by Nikki Greenberg, and was very excited to join this community because in the past 10 years within real estate, not a lot of women. Within just tech, not a lot of women. I could probably count on both hands how many women in the prop tech space that I'm very, very close to, and the network is strong. It's very incredible. Um, but yeah, I'm seeing also a lot of young folk reach out and ask me, how do I get into prop tech, or how do I get into entrepreneurship, startup culture? And that's always exciting because you want to be able to, pull out the individuals who are just willing to try it.
And when you say prop tech, some people don't know. I'm assuming
Right.
that stands for property technology.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, here's what's interesting. There's new fields of study that there's so many. When we were growing up, there were, your basics, and now there's all these new fields of study, which are kind of subdivisions of other, it was real estate. And
Yeah.
now with technology, there's subcategories, I guess I'll say. You, there's something that you pioneered, I have here, retail as a service model.
Yes.
Tell me what that is.
Yes. So in working with Westfield, the Loways were very excited about using technology as a way to prop up how tenants were selected. And so they built something called Westfield Labs. Underneath that, me and a team of incredible women actually built out something called Bespoke, which was a mix between co-working space, experiential, and retail. And it was really fun because we took 40,000 square foot of Westfield space. It was on the 4th floor in San Francisco. And we designed and built out something that would offer up different exchange of how retail could be leased. And so they definitely took different parts of that and used it as learnings to build out the rest of their portfolio. But that was an exciting time. Obviously, WeWork was growing. And so we took a piece of that and said, great, why not build out how retail and shopping malls could be? So it was a testing ground. So retail as a service became something more acknowledged by REITs, more acknowledged by developers. And it meant that, how do we ensure that online brands can start to outfit physical retail in a different way, so more templated. It definitely was a generational thing of that era in the 2010 to 20. And I think that now, you're seeing different technology show up in different ways. Companies like Leap are doing different things and helping brands do more of a retail as a service model. Beta was another one that was really exciting and was able to have brands test out their product. We look at it as being purely technology. So we don't have any assets in regards to real estate. And we look at as great, we are a platform that purely provides booking opportunities for any storefronts who have access, and then any brands who, even online and off our legacy brands, who want to test different markets and grow their footprint physically.
Can you tell me, there's an abundance of empty malls around, and people are always wondering, what are they going to do with those? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I do think that I think we're going to think very differently about how space is being utilized. There's so many great companies who are thinking about how we work, how we play, how we interact, how we communicate. I do think it's an opportunity to think about things from a larger standpoint, like how communities are run, how education is run. And so I'm hopeful that we start to engage more private and public sector and take the data points that we already know exist and start to collapse it into solutions that really say, great, there's so much private ownership of this land. How do we actually serve the public sector of education, of healthcare? And so perhaps it'll come full circle. And Sue, you mentioned the question about whether I would ever jump into healthcare. Perhaps that could be something in the future. But I do think what I love about infrastructure, and especially real estate, is that so much of how communities are built and how we connect with each other, how we communicate with one another. And if people are there's so much talked about in terms of smart cities or the 20-minute city. There's going to be more and more groundwork of how we actually create smarter cities, more efficient, but more compacted towards communication and being able to be more efficient around energy. And I'm hopeful for all these things.
Yeah. And how about the homeless community? That's a whole other topic that will have to play into this, right?
Yes.
What do we do for all of these people? It's, east to west, north to south.
Yes. And I'm hopeful, there were so many programs that during the pandemic served the homeless community. I'm hoping that we don't look at it as more of a Band-Aid, but rather, how do we look at mental health and wellness? And how do we look at these spaces that can actually serve as a community format for us to really learn about it in a larger sector? And so, yeah, there's so much that can be done. I mean, we can go on and on for hours on YouTube.
There'll be years and years of work for you, Joy. Which is exciting, right?
Yes.
Everything evolves, and I too I always have faith in, human beings to solve problems. Sometimes it takes 100 years, sometimes it's just a couple, depending on the size of the problem. Is retail a private company or a public? Do you have investors?
Yes, we do. It's a private company.
Okay.
And again, we are super excited to continue to grow. We're now based in New York City, and we're going to expand this year to San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Miami.
And what are you most in need of? Our audience is full of lots of incredible, bright, people. What would you say, that you're looking for?
I love other women founders and entrepreneurs, but really individuals who are in the hospitality space. I would say brands, direct-to-consumer brands, larger executives in the brand space. I would say anyone in real estate too, any investors as well. We love to share what we're up to and what we envision for the next 10, 50 years. So yeah.
Awesome. My last question. So I know that there's always women in the audience that are looking for their next move. And some of them have big ideas as entrepreneurs themselves. And, I'm not always thrilled with what's your advice for them, because I think everybody goes about things differently. But what would you say to someone who needs the belief in themselves that they can do it, that they can take the risk?
There's always this saying about your network is your net worth. I think often that minimizes individuals who maybe feel like they're not in the big cities or don't have access to the networks that most people um, would consider a challenge. And I think if you have an idea, just show up as it, share with some people, and then they will share with more people. And network effect is just how much you believe in yourself. And so the more you share it, the more you share what you believe in, the more it just starts to grow legs, starts to grow roots. And people, you just go after it. I think if it's hidden in, the unsaid, it will never,
Yes.
it will never have legs. So you just
Correct.
have to tell people, even if it sounds crazy, there's someone who will say, that's a great idea. Or,
Yeah.
I'd love to, tell me more. So
Yeah.
really anytime someone has something, and I think also there's always going to be the combat of like, oh, is it like that? Or someone's built that. It doesn't matter. I think the best things are based on the individual, how their lived experience creates a better company, a better process, a better product. And so I find so many incredible founders that are women that are building the next generation of our products. And I just say, keep going.
Yeah, they're fixing problems. And I love what you said because it's true. The more people you speak to about your idea, it just amplifies. And networks are just relationships, right? It's just meeting people, sharing, saying who you are and what you're doing and how I can help you perhaps.
That's correct.
Yeah. It was so lovely to have you on the show, Joy. I wish you continued success, and I'm going to be following. I'm excited about what you're building and what you're doing.
Thank you, Sue.
Stay with us for our last break. You'll hear from Penn Community Bank and Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and I'll be back to close out the show.
From Philadelphia to the Lehigh Valley and everywhere in between. For 150 years, Penn Community Bank has been a part of your neighborhood. Helping businesses start, supporting families as they grow, and staying connected to the people and places that make this region special. It's who we are and where we're from. Penn Community Bank. Here we are, and here we grow.
We are CHOP, and we can't wait to show you around. We're the nation's first children's hospital. Now, a care network with more than 50 locations that continues to expand. 3 state-of-the-art research buildings with 1.5 million square feet of space. We have grown from 12 beds 165 years ago to nearly 600 beds and one of the best children's hospitals in the world. We have a level 1 trauma center, 11 floors of patient units, more than 20 operating rooms, first of its kind delivery unit for babies with birth defects, a separate cardiac operative and catheterization suite, and places to learn, like our internationally recognized simulation center. We have trained generations of leaders in the field of pediatrics. We are world leaders in medicine, surgery, and science. One of the top recipients in NIH funding for pediatric research. In this building, pioneers in CAR T therapy, mitochondrial disease, brain tumors, hyperinsulinism, and other rare diseases. Here, groundbreaking work in fetal surgery, genetics and genomics, and neurology. In our newest building, leaders in social determinants of health, clinical informatics and epidemiology, autism, trauma and injury prevention. Our patients come from every state and 115 countries. Meeting these challenges requires the best and the brightest. We are passionate about pediatrics. We are motivated to make a difference in the world and in our community. We are a team. We are CHOP.
That's it, everyone, for another week of Women to Watch. Thanks so much for being with me. Next week, I'll be speaking with Molly Ruland, and Molly is the founder of Heartcast Media. Have a great week.